The Business Bunker. Email us now, bunker@kentbusinessradio.co.uk. Paul Andrews with The Business Bunker, kentbusinessradio.co.uk.
Good stuff. Do you know, I think we'll introduce our studio guest, who has manfully struggled in here through awful traffic, Mr. David Barton, the motorist lawyer. David, welcome to the show. We'll get Jules to sort you out on the microphone. It's lovely to have
Hello.
you. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Lovely to see
Paul.
you. Yeah. Thank you for struggling in.
No, thank you for asking me back again.
Horrendous journey.
Lovely new studio.
Yes. Oh, yes. You haven't been to this one before, have you?
No.
It's a bit large and echoey, isn't it?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot nicer than the last one. A bit more elbow room.
David loved the last one.
No, I made
so
it.
Much so he came
I made
back
it down, notwithstanding the queues, and stuck, of course, rigidly to the speed limits all the way.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Tell us a little bit about you. I know you've been on the show before, but of course we have loads of new listeners now. So tell us a bit about you and what you do.
I'm a solicitor. I'm based in Maidstone. But I provide a service to drivers throughout the southeast, those who get into difficulty with road traffic law, speeding, drink driving, points, disqualification, anything to do with magistrates and Crown Court prosecutions in criminal law. That's what I do. David,
I want to ask you some questions here, and I'm not sure if this is your field or not. So no. It's just that David specialises in law in this country. But talking about driving laws, I mean, recently in France, they've started to introduce stuff where you have to carry breathalyser kits and stuff like that.
They have, yes. Well, with effect from the beginning of this month, 2nd of July. France implemented a new law that requires all drivers in France, irrespective of the country they come from, to carry a self-breath test kit. And the reason
costing
is,
how much?
I gather they're about £2 a go.
Right.
You can buy them at channel ports.
Yeah. Street hawkers.
Yes.
But that's to go with your yellow jacket and your triangle.
Well, you have to have a yellow jacket and a triangle in the car.
Right.
So in the boot isn't good enough, and I know of drivers that have come back recently from trips in France who have picked up €90 fixed penalties for not having their jackets or their triangles in the car with them.
What's the reason for having it in the car, not the boot, then?
If you have to stop because you've suddenly broken down, you can emerge from your car jacketed.
Right.
Okay.
And you don't have to fiddle around trying to find it in the boot.
Right.
And some of the prevailing advice I'm aware of says that if you're stopped by a police officer, you ought to be able to emerge from your car wearing a jacket, and that way you don't fiddle around and you're ready to display the triangle at the same time.
And I suppose you're also a sitting target. If you're at the back of the car and you're on a motorway, then it's probably a bit more dangerous.
Yeah, and that's why they stick. And the trouble is that many non-French drivers are targets for police officers.
They make a lot of money.
They do, and some of the French police are notoriously zealous in the way they go about performing their duties. But the self-breathalyser kit is implemented because France, historically, has had a very high death rate on its motorways. So they have...
Through drink driving?
Yes. There was a time, sort of 5 years plus ago, when French police were a little relaxed, but not now.
Yeah.
And the drink drive limit is lower than it is in this country. Here, the blood level is 80. In France, and indeed many other European countries, the level is 50.
Right. Which relates to what in drinking?
It's about a glass of wine.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think, because I'm just thinking of the routiers, where all the truckers go. I mean, I've been through France and gone through all the routier restaurants, and they're amazing, aren't they? And you go in, and the truckers go in, and they get a litre of wine or a litre of cider with their meal, and that's a tradition. And they've all got these great big tummies because they just do that. That's their life, and they go there. So what's happening there?
Well, the laws are in, and they're being implemented with some severity in order to drive down the death toll.
Right.
So,
do you think there's ever a point where we get to zero drinking if you're driving?
Well, Scotland at the moment is debating very hard whether it should go down from 80 to 50. The indications are that it will.
Right.
Now, I don't know I can't remember how many years we've had 80, but it's certainly more than my working lifetime.
Yeah, quite a long time.
So whether we get down to zero that would be a big step. I suspect probably not.
But sometimes I find at lunchtime, it's the first glass of wine that makes you feel slightly merry.
Yes.
If if you haven't eaten much.
Yes.
Whereas in the evening you can sort of have 2-3 glasses and you've eaten more, and but that
first
first glass sometimes
And then
can.
you relax and then you have another one.
As a sanctimonious teetotaler, one of the things that frightens me when I see people drinking is how little they realise they will be over the limit the next day.
Yeah.
It is a problem. People don't understand how long it can take your body to metabolise or get rid of the alcohol that you've taken in. And it often, I've come across many instances over the years of people being caught the next morning, or they might even think a train journey from London to Headcorn or to Maidstone, the hour on the train magically gets rid of the alcohol. It doesn't.
Yeah.
But travellers in France and Europe have got to be really careful. On the breathalyser kit, there is the police are going to apparently hold back for a period until about the early part of November, by which time they will expect people to have taken on board that this is now a requirement.
And what exactly do you do with it? I mean,
well, you're supposed to carry. You must carry one. Advice says you should have two,
right,
so that if you use one, you've always got a spare.
So is the idea you breathalyse yourself first?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yeah, you check and make sure that you're safe, you're under the limit.
Right. Okay.
It's a discipline process. And there are companies in this country that for some years have sold them here, but they've never taken off in quite that way. But France has just chosen to make it a law.
Because I mean, just think. I know this probably sounds a bit crass, but it's typical of me. Purely as a marketing thing, you'd think that pubs and stuff would sell kits like that.
Yes.
Just say, look, don't drink too much, and check yourself before you go home. Well, and if you're already over the limit, stay the night and drink some more.
Well, there is that. But the neat thing is that the devices that are now mandatory at a couple of pounds each, it's got to be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I seem to have remembered at some point, and you can put me right here, because I thought a few years ago it wasn't possible to breathalyse yourself. I thought that the authorities kind of frowned on it, and
they have in this country.
Yeah.
Because there has been no manufacturer, as far as I'm aware anyway, that has been authorised to produce them,
right,
or to produce devices that people can properly rely on.
Right.
Whereas it's different, I think, if nationally one introduces a law to make it compulsory, then there has to be a supplier of devices that people are able to say, well, I used this, and this is what it revealed. I was safe.
What do you have any experience of drug driving?
Yes, I do, because I think later in the year, possibly into next year, there will be devices available that will enable police to quickly measure what levels of drug somebody has in their body. At the moment, it's a fairly clumsy process. They go through a roadside test. They go in, which is can you stand up straight? There's then a test at the police station itself, which is again quite a cumbersome, walking in a straight line, touching your nose with your eyes closed. I've seen the forms that are filled out.
That's quite antiquated, isn't it?
And then the blood sample goes off to be analysed, and then it comes back, so that all those things added together, it can be quite a while before a driver knows whether he's got a problem or not. But I've got a couple of cases winding their way slowly through the courts at the moment.
Right, okay.
Drivers alleged to have been unfit to drive as a result of taking, in both cases, it's cannabis.
Right,
How hard is it for you, as a solicitor, when you know that drink driving is dangerous, to defend someone, perhaps, who has done?
Well, very often it doesn't involve defending as such. What you're more often doing is helping them explain to the court why they made a mistake. And they want an opportunity to put their hands up, offer an apology, to publicly recognise that what they did wasn't right. And you try and keep the penalty down. That's all. So defending tends not actually as an issue where someone is pleading not guilty. That tends not to arise very often.
I was going to ask you about that, and what kind of circumstances, with not just drink driving but all kinds of traffic offences, what kind of circumstances can there be where a prosecution's been brought unfairly, for want of a better word?
Well, some cases, in a lot of road traffic offences, the issue is one of did you do it or didn't you? Were you over 70 on the motorway or were you under 70? There are other offences where then it's not black and white. Dangerous driving, it's a judgment call on whether the driving was or was not dangerous. That's opinion. Same for driving without due care and attention. Did the driving fall below the standard to be expected of a careful and competent driver? That's subjective.
Absolutely.
So there are some offences where there is significant room for debate. Others it doesn't apply. But with drink driving, you're either under or over the limit. The issue may be, were you knowingly over the limit? I've dealt with cases where drinks have been laced.
Right. Yeah.
And while someone is technically guilty because they were driving over the limit, they would have an argument then to persuade the court not to disqualify, and that's perfectly proper if the drinks were laced.
Very hard to prove a drink's laced.
It is. I have had 2 or 3 cases over the years, not many of them, where afterwards a so-called friend has admitted popping an extra vodka in a drink that wasn't spotted.
Right. Okay.
It does go on now and again.
Right.
Or cases where the blood sample or the urine sample has become contaminated in some way. And those happen, but I would think statistically they're quite rare. Most of the time, if you are driving and if the alcohol level in your blood or breath is above the limit, it's quite difficult to... So the issue of defending someone doesn't tend to arise quite that often.
Right, okay, no, I understand. So
you're more often helping them to explain to the court why they've been silly, why they've made an error of judgment.
Absolutely. We need to set up our next telephone guest fairly shortly.
Of course.
But we'll talk to you some more after we've spoken to that. For the moment, David, thank you very much. But do stay with us, and we'll come back to you after our next guest, and we'll carry on some of that conversation, which is fascinating. Thank you. But anyway, I want to come back to David Barton and talk to him a little bit more, 'cause we've got a bit of time. I've got a zillion emails left to read as well.
David.
Yeah, I want to talk to David because I'm being a concerned parent now as well. Because a certain person not a million miles away from me turns 17 next week, and he's going to be agitating to learn to drive. And I just wanted to ask you what your views are, because you see a lot of this on youth driving. And one of the things that I came across a while back in the United States, they have I don't know what the official term is, but it's like a graduated driving license.
That's exactly what it is.
Yep. Hold on, let me turn you up a bit. Sorry, David.
Yeah, graduated driving licenses,
right?
So that you acquire the ability to drive on certain road types,
right,
as the years go by.
Okay, so you kind of progress upwards until they unleash you on the full thing.
Here, pass your test. You can drive anywhere.
Yeah.
Even in France, you can't do that.
Right. Okay.
If you're to drive on a motorway in France, you have to be over 18.
Right. Okay.
So if you take a co-driver with you and he's under 18, although a full license holder, he can't drive on a motorway. People don't know that.
Okay, no, that's interesting.
But in America, it's been said there that it's contributed towards a significant saving.
Right, okay.
And it's, I think I'm right in saying not every state has it, but a majority of states have that, where from you obtain a series of licenses, so incrementally you're able to drive on all roads in all states.
Absolutely. I mean, over here you see these green plates with a P on it.
Just passed.
Indicate you've just passed, but that's not a mandatory thing, is it?
No, it isn't.
You must make Stuart one of those, though.
Oh, I'm going to make
just
him
for the fun of it.
Yeah,
one on each end.
Yeah. Well,
I've often wondered what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah. He did say to me yesterday, so once I've got my provisional licence, are you arranging insurance for the Porsche? Good joke, Stuart. Yeah, of course I am.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd keep pressing for that one.
Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, I want to come back, David, to, lots of people get caught in speed cameras and things like that.
Yes.
Well, I mean, where are we in terms of what's happening with things like that?
In fact, where are we?
Yeah. No, but what I'm getting at, I guess,
one of life's big questions.
Yeah. Again, you kind of made reference to it a bit earlier that says, if you're speeding, you're speeding. If they got a picture of you doing that, there's not really a lot you can say about that. So if someone wants to argue about it, what are the kind of things that they normally cite as mitigation that are of any use to them, if you see what I mean?
Oh, if it's a defence, I wasn't speeding, then there's an issue over whether the camera was technically defective. That's very difficult indeed. If it's being measured by a handheld device, police officer, was it defective in some way? Was it pointed at the right vehicle? And people can and do run sometimes very expensive defences that ultimately don't achieve a great deal. But there can on occasions be circumstances where the device wasn't properly calibrated or tested, or there's a serious issue over whether it was indeed pointed at the correct vehicle.
Sure.
It does happen.
What made you go into this fine side of helping people with the driving offences?
Well, apart from an overwhelming desire to help people generally, it's something I started doing when I first qualified. The day I qualified as a solicitor in December 1982, my first job by the firm that then employed me, they asked me to go and represent someone in court on a no insurance case. And it's something over the years I've simply built up.
And now you specialise.
A body of knowledge and experience, and I quite like the work.
Right, okay.
So it suits me. I enjoy the different courts I go to. I enjoy most of the different clients I meet, not all of them.
Right, sure.
Any high-profile ones that we're allowed to talk about, or not?
Oh, some high-profile ones that I can't talk about.
You can't talk about. Right.
Yeah.
But speeding ones, they tend that there is I think a significant myth amongst the public that there is going to be a way out of this somehow if I can find the right technical approach, and more often than not that's just not so.
Yeah.
And some people are willing to spend significant sums to find that out. What I try to do with people is to simply encourage them to be realistic.
Yeah. I was going to say that there is this, when you advertise as a motorist lawyer, the immediate instinct is, right, he's going to get me off.
Yeah,
he's going to have some clever... there was that famous guy from Cheshire or whatever that got into Mr. Loophole or whatever they called him.
Yes, he's trademarked that name.
Yeah.
But it perpetuates the myth that there is a way out of most circumstances, and that's not so.
Yeah.
What I say on my own website, what I don't do is raise people's expectations. I try and be realistic. If there's a legitimate defence to be run, that's fine.
I'm actually looking for a sticker to go on the back of my car, and this is serious because I've had 2 speeding offences, and I want to say, back off, because I've had my points, I will stick to the speed limit, something like that.
Well, interestingly, the Department for Transport is currently consulting on whether to increase fixed penalties from £60 to £90, and the likelihood is that the fees will go up.
Yeah.
But in addition, they're proposing to make driving without due care and attention an offence to be dealt with by fixed penalty. And tailgating is an example of a type of driving that the department wants to target.
Yeah. The trouble with things like that is it's not easily spottable. Yeah, because there's so many speed cameras and things like that now, you can catch a lot of speeding offences.
Yes.
But you can't. There's not a camera, as far as I know, that can.
No, there isn't.
Do you for
in the
tailgating?
No, tailgating, middle laning on the motorway.
Yeah.
That's another one that's been.
Yeah.
It's on the department's website. Telephone usage is likely to go up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I watched a white van man the other day, and he was on his mobile phone, and he was reversing while he was talking with it to his ear, went up on the curb and missed this woman by a whisker who was in a wheelchair. Literally missed her by that, whisker.
Funny.
And I just was so furious. I wanted to take his number down. So should I have done? What should I have done?
Oh, you could have made a report. Whether it would have achieved anything is so difficult to know.
Sure.
You'd have got drawn into the case probably.
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of myths proliferated on the internet about this type of work.
So in the last minute or so that we've got on the show, David, I want to ask you about the kind of things that can be of help. I'm trying to think of the right way of putting this without sounding terrible. What should we look for in terms of the authorities following the correct procedure when they do bring these kind of things? Let's put it that way.
There's such a range of offences, it's difficult to generalise. Stopped at the roadside, suspicion of drink driving, then there's got to be a roadside breath test. There doesn't have to be a reason to stop.
Right.
They can be spot checked. And then it's just following the correct procedure at the station. For a range of other offences, there's got to be a verbal warning given at the time, or a written one within 14 days, a summons then within 6 months. So there are some time limits that do apply.
Okay. Because sometimes you hear cases of, you know, just simple things like speeding tickets or whatever, where the authorities didn't send it in time.
Indeed.
Yeah.
If a car's photographed doing more than the speed limit, a request for driver details and a notice of intended prosecution must go out within 14 days. And if it's late, whilst you still have to provide the information who was driving, a summons can't be issued. It's out of time. So there are some things that are worth looking out for.
So do you get called out, David, day and night to these things?
Oh no.
So you don't go out in an emergency at, in the middle of the night to
I
sit
haven't.
with them?
No, I haven't had that yet.
Cool.
Good.
Who knows? One of the things I am doing is on the issue of myths, is I'm in the autumn embarking on a series of presentations to 17 and 18-year-olds at schools.
Right. Okay. Good.
Throughout some of the county, in the hope that it will bust some of the myths and give a different perspective to young drivers
That's a good idea.
that they will otherwise get. So I've got a series starting in October.
That's brilliant. You know, as the parent of someone that's going to be in that, I'm wholeheartedly behind that. And if you need any help with that, I will gladly help.
I have 3 children as well, and I've been through exactly the same process.
Yeah, cool. I mean, my eldest son, who's now 27, shortly after he passed his test, he had a really bad accident, which luckily wasn't his fault, but and he wasn't going that fast. He was only doing 30 mile an hour, but it wrote the car off, and it was really frightening. Yeah. Cool. David, for the moment, thank you so much for joining us on the Business Bunker. As always, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Give us a shout for your website.
It's motorists-lawyer-kent.co.uk.
Brilliant. And we've got a link to that on the Kent Business Radio website. So if you want to follow up with any of this, or you need help, or you're thinking of driving fast this afternoon,
or you're going to France,
or going to France, then motorist-lawyer-kent.co.uk is the place to look. David, thank you so much for joining us. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show again. Thank you.
Pleased to have been here.